So it could be that, yeah, I didn't see any of that. But also, you know, in this kind of classical, like, Mexican gender system, right? I mean, female identity is not problematized in the same way that male identity is. In popular imagination.
My question actually kind of builds off of that. And we read Mother Camp earlier in the year, and I was fascinated by the relationships that you kind of pointed out, and to some of the stuff that was described by Newton in her book too. And but one of the things that, in relating to what Janelle was saying, is the sexual violence that is verbalized within the matches. And I know I found it really entertaining you describing these older women that were kind of saying these really vulgar things, and I would like to have just been witness to that. Humor, but could you maybe speak a bit to kind of, is sexual violence kind of an aspect that underlies this this discipline or these engagements? And I don't know if it's the same. I looked to it, but I can't see it. Is it the same in Bolivia too? Even with the terminology coming from the spectators there.
Well, I think that there's a way in which any struggle for dominance between two men in Mexico is always going to be sexualized. And so, I mean, it makes sense that that is part of what's being played out in the movie. I don't know if that's...
Well, I was thinking the one that, so maybe I'll draw a comparison to illustrate better, but cut his dick off, right? That's quite an aggressive sexual act, or it was the other term.
Yes, although, you know, it did say cheating.
Okay, and that's maybe a mistranslation. I don't quite...
No, it's not a mistranslation, but it softens it a little.
Okay.
But yes, it is very violent. Although, okay, just to be clear, nobody else in any other arena had quite the mouth that those two. I was just like, I was. See, that was one of the most amazing matches. There was, I don't remember if I put this in the book or not, but like, okay, before a match starts, if you're at one of the smaller arenas, all the kids in the audience come up into the ring and start like playing each other on with each other. And there was this one person of indeterminate gender who came up into the ring, and there's all these little boys, and they're all like, you know, wrestling with each other. And this person of indeterminate gender is like showing them how to do an uppercut against the turnbuckle guards, you know, and it's like really sort of, but it was just something that didn't look like a little boy. And then this person got down, you know, off the, out of the ring, and the first match started between the two women. And this person started saying stuff like, basically, I forget exactly what the wording was, but, you know, yeah, I would screw her. And this guy said, but you don't have a penis. And this person said, you're not my uncle, I don't have to listen to you. So, I mean, there was a lot of really interesting gender verbal stuff going on, but that was exceptional. I never saw anything or heard anything like that extended and that explicit as what I heard that night. I mean, I learned words that night. Most of the time, you wouldn't, you know, people would not yell properly. They would just say, "Sácale los ojos." Poke his eyes out.
Okay.
Usually it was not so explicit. It'd be a little more explicit when the Exoticos were fighting, but that was part of their shtick. Yeah.
One of the things that I had a hard time understanding, like throughout the book, or maybe just like my own position, is not being able to understand it. But Lucha Libre seems like this populist kind of reinscribing, even if it's through parody, this political system that seems kind of like futile for a populist group. And so, like, and that all seems tied up in the choice to make it a fixed event, like, or the idea that the sport is fixed is what ties it to the political system, right? Like that the political system is also kind of fixed, even if you vote, it doesn't matter. And so, like, why in this populist activity recreate that? Why not, like, you know?
Are you talking about Lucha Libre, or are you talking about the activist appropriation of Lucha Libre? Because they're two different things.
Yeah, I guess. That's a good question. So, to me it seemed...
Which seems unfair, because you're supposed to be asking me.
I guess to me there wasn't a difference between the two in the fixed nature of the event, and that even when it wasn't the activist reappropriation, it still seems like it was the luchadors were supposed to represent the people, right? Like were they never?
In the arena, the luchadores, it's not that they represent the people, they represent themselves, they represent their characters. What makes it but it's popular theater. I mean, this is what you do in the neighborhood. There's like, I mean, it's a little hard to imagine because it's not that easy most nights to see professional wrestling in any U.S. city that I know. You know, you can, but it's not a regular thing. I mean, in Mexico City, you can go to see Lucha Libre literally any day of the week. And on weekends, you've got a whole bunch of different choices of places to go to see it. So I guess what I'm saying is that the fixed ending is always already there. Right? I'm arguing that there was some pleasure for people in kind of seeing what they knew about their lives but weren't supposed to say about their lives portrayed in this kind of theatrical fashion, in a way that where the fact that it was theatrical was never spoken, right? So I mean, if the way that power is exercised in the society is through the power of secrecy and through the power of things that are left unsaid, and then you watch this performance in which one of the things that energizes the performance is the power of things unsaid, then I mean, I think that's the pleasure that part of the pleasure that people can get from watching it. What I'm arguing in terms of the activists is that one, they knew that it was associated with the working class and was looked down on, and seen as not recuperable, right? I mean, there's all this other popular culture in Mexico that the middle class would see as recuperable as part of national identity, like the Day of the Dead stuff, and you know, a lot of the indigenous practices, and you know, the paper cutting, and all that kind of thing. It's like, nice, that's Mexico, we're Mexicans, right? Lucha Libre was this thing that it's like I said, it's like I would tell people that I was working on Lucha Libre, and they would say to me, oh, I could never do that, because everybody knows to throw cups of piss on you from the upper balconies. And so there's this whole mythos about it that extends to the Mexican working class. This idea that the Mexico City working class are a bunch of uncivilized, you know, maleducados, they're machista, they're you know, untrustworthy and all that. It's this class stigmatization that kind of crystallized in Lucha Libre. So if you're working with people as a populist political organizer, what you do is you celebrate that stigmatized practice, but also that stigmatized practice always already had this kind of very coy critique of the political system. I mean, they never said, it was never made explicit at all. And the arena owners were strong supporters of the PRI, and they would have, I mean, like, the PRI would do these Labor Day demonstrations in Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see that. I mean, I think that, one of the things that I find, one of the many things that I find most interesting about Lucha Libre is that way in which the relationship between the character and the person, is very complicated in ways that make you wonder if it isn't about personhood, you know? So, and I mean, I guess there's a way in which it's all connected, but I don't know if I would say liminality is quite, I mean, you know, you've got this situation in which on the one hand people were telling, and again, this is like what people were telling, the wrestlers would be like, you know, whether you're a rudo or a technico comes from inside, you know? Except that everybody knows that wrestlers switch over the course of their careers, and Santos started as a rudo. And the characters, both for some wrestlers, I mean, it's like, El Santo was Héctor Guzmán, but he also wasn't, you know, and Hijo del Santo is, you're not supposed to know his name, right, but everybody does, but they pretend they don't. You know, one of the places where I kind of want to start working this out is for my next trip. There was a horrible tragedy a year ago in March when the hijo de Perro Aguayo, the son of Perro Aguayo, Perro Aguayo was a very popular wrestler when I was doing my field work. His son went into the business and he was killed in the ring. And he was killed in the ring in this accident that just didn't make sense that it was fatal. I mean, I've seen other accounts of or seen footage of other fatal accidents in the ring. And usually it's when the wrestler does something that's clearly dangerous. And this was just like stuff that I had done. But he broke his neck. Actually, he had 3 cervical fractures. And the guy who killed him was this very popular wrestler in the United States who had been unmasked in the US, but had wanted to remask. And so they were, in Mexico, they basically decided that they didn't recognize unmaskings in the United States as unmasking, so he could go back in his regular mask. And it was like his first or second match after coming home to Mexico. And he like, you know, kills this guy. I mean, it wasn't his fault, but it was his, you know, his move. And of course, a lot of people were sending him death threats, and a lot of people were accusing him of doing it deliberately. And one of the ways that he showed his warning was that he unmasked. So I don't know what that has to do with that, but I'm sure it has something to do with it.
As we keep talking, I'm going to put some up so you can have some visuals. Okay? So Nell, we're still going to have you, but we're not going to have you up in 8 by 10. Which I'm sure you're probably happy about.
I have a question about sort of the continuation of your research. Am I correct that you're still researching in Mexico, but it's not on Lucha Libre anymore? And maybe you could just talk a little bit about the progression of that. There's no judgment, I'm just curious.
So you're sort of like, okay, no,
It's sort of a what after
Okay.
question.
So, yeah. It's a little awkward.
Okay.
The reason it's awkward is that after my first academic job ended, I was not able to get another one for a couple of years, and so I was like broken homeless, so I ran back to Mexico City where I worked as a street musician for 2 years. It was an amazing experience, extremely stressful, sounds like fun, sometimes was, a lot of the time wasn't. I have a million fascinating anecdotes, and I intended to, once I got another academic job, go back and do it more formally as research. But the academic job that I have is a 4-4 teaching work with no support for research. And I realized that, and also street musicians, not a stable community. You know, you leave and come back, the people that you sort of made contacts with either aren't there or they don't remember you. So, so I've kind I'm kind of like stuck on what to do with that. And as I said, I don't really have research funding, so I go back to Mexico to visit these days. It's one of the problem with ethnography is you really do have to be there and be there for a long period of time, or you're doing some other form of research. So now what I'm focusing on are these little moments in which something happens with Lucha Libre that I think has some kind of significance in terms of resignification of Lucha Libre, or some kind of Mexican social drama in terms sense. So I'm looking at that, or I've been thinking about that Místico ad. I've been thinking about Hijo de Perro Aguayo's death, and I've been thinking about this amazing thing that happened a few years ago where, to make a very long story very short, a woman doing a documentary on her family who were producers of B movies in the 1970s found the long-lost, thought to be apocryphal copy of the new topless version of El Santo and Dracula's Treasure, and was going to show it at a film festival, but was not able to because Hijo del Santo basically started a lawsuit, and that it violated, that it was defamation of Santo's character, and that he owns the copyright to El Santo's character. And so, you know, hijinks ensued.
You should tell them what people are wanting you to write about now, too, but you were telling me about Trump and
Oh yeah, I should tell you, yeah. So what people keep saying, and actually now I'm wondering if you're getting the same thing, is this idea of Trump as professional wrestler, and that Trump's campaign is basically professional wrestling. And I mean, I've been thinking, yes, but I write about Lucha Libre, and it's not Lucha Libre.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like it de-dignifies Lucha Libre to
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, I figured I'd just Google Trump Lucha Libre to see what would come up.
Yeah.
And Rey Mysterio was going to have a bout in Yakin Valley Sundome and actually called on Trump to show up.
Oh, can you send me that?
Yes.
I can just Google it myself.
But,
That was, I think, during the 2008 elections, Barack Obama appeared on WWE.
Barack, all of the candidates did. Obama
Okay.
did, Clinton did, and McCain did. And then they also did, like, made wrestling characters based on them. And you know, I mean, Trump was involved with the WWE. It actually makes sense if you think of him as electioneering as a heel. You know, I mean, like, his whole persona really has been as a heel, and like that point where he was like, I could shoot somebody and they'd still love me. I mean, is that not? That's a heel. It's like that's like the rudo mas rudo, but and in a way, it makes sense that in the end it doesn't work, because in the end, the rudos have their cheering section, but the cheering section for the técnicos is always bigger, unless you're in Ciudad Mesa, in which case the cheering section for the rudos is bigger. But,
And most of you wanted to be Rudos, by the way. It sounded like it was so fun. What was this about your...
actually, it's different fun. Like, the technicals get to do the acrobatic moves, and when you do those and you don't die, it's just like, I mean, it's the biggest, it might not be the biggest adrenaline rush, like I'm sure like parachute or something, but it's just amazingly fun. I mean, training in Lucha Libre is the most fun thing I've ever done. It's the most fun thing I ever did.
I got thrown around a lot, and that was really fun to do.
Yeah, that actually, getting thrown is a blast. and I got really, really good at falling, and that turns out to be a very important life skill.
Actually, that was a question that I had because I do judo, so
Uh-huh.
like the idea of like falling all the time and
Yeah, I mean, I did Goju karate for about 10 years, and at the time that I did this research, I was transitioning into doing more internal kung fu. But I had friends who were Aikido players, and I would go to the women's martial arts conference. So I had some training in those falling arts as well. And so I figured I could train in Lucha Libre without getting killed. It was funny because one thing about it was that it was really liberating, because the whole thing in martial arts is that you're supposed to never show emotion, you know. And in Lucha Libre, you're supposed to show emotions that you're not feeling. You know? And so it was a very interesting transition. Physically, it was also really interesting. Here, can you there's mats in the back. Somebody said there's mats in the back. I might not actually, I haven't done a full roll in years and years, so I'm not going to do one. I'm just going to, and then maybe I'm going to do one. It's different, yeah.
Are you doing that stuff? Oh.
Oh yeah, and when you learn things that, what you learn is how to do a real arm lock. And how to defend from a real arm lock, but you learn how to not take it to the floor. A skilled wrestler should be able to so a skilled wrestler should be able to make it
No, está bien. Sí, está bien.
Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you. And maybe leave it off the electrical bulb.
No sé si... Sí, ¿cómo seca el dedo? Ponlo en pausa ahora. Ya.
And you land on your feet. And see, this one is not as bicycle friendly. We started left foot forward. You remember if you would start left or right forward for rolls?
I think I started right, but
Although it was the opposite in the U.S. and in Mexico. Okay.
it's the other hemisphere, so you do it backwards.
So more like
Sort of, yeah, see, but you have to, that was terrible. The mechanics are a little different. And it's actually more effective for protecting you. So that first class I had, I was doing it on a bare floor. And if you do Aikido rolls on a bare floor, you just get it's a nice even bruise. It wasn't until they showed me how to do the other stuff that I could do it on a bare floor and just be fine. And when you see him going out of the ring, I never did that. But yeah, you're just landing on your feet or on your back.
Can we switch to the wrestling?
That's something that should be done. It's also a different.
So when you went back to Mexico and you were doing street musician
Yeah.
things, why go street musician and not go back and go full on Lucha Libre?
Okay, to be a luchador or a luchadora in Mexico, you need to be licensed. And it takes about 3 years to get to the point where you can be licensed. And I was out of practice and not trained for 3 years, so I was not licensed. Also, it's altogether possible that I was making more than as a street musician than I would have. It would depend, but as somebody who was just entering, who didn't have family in the business, who was just going to have to pick up matches here and there. And also, I was older by then. This is not easy on your body. It's, some of it isn't as hard as it looks, but some of it is harder. And so I just, it really wasn't a possibility. When I was doing the research, I kind of fantasized about it, I could just do this instead. But it's really a hard life for most luchadores. And you really have to, that has to be like what you want to do. It's like one of these things where it's either that's what's going to be your life or you're not going to be successful at it. Most of the wrestlers that I knew well enough to know how much they were making were not making a living at it. And a lot of them left the business when they did research.
And Anne's been trying to get.
Oh, sorry.
I know you briefly mentioned it in the book, but the use of music in Lucha Libre, you said that for entering music and code for different
Yeah.
nationalities and whatnot. I was wondering if you could expand on that, or like other uses of music, if there were any.
Once the wrestlers enter, there's no further music. But
I started to my thinking son.
so, yeah, but wrestlers have their theme songs, and the theme songs sometimes, but not always, coded them as like a regional identity or Canadian identity. Do you?
No, I'm a musicologist, so I'm
Yeah.
interested in seeing how that plays.
How that played into, let's see, yeah, it's not that different actually in that respect from US wrestling. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to the kind of growing popularity of Lucha Libre outside of Mexico in like fiction and using it as a symbol and how that speaks to
Yeah,
Mexico.
yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I have to say about it yet, but I mean, this is very interesting. Another interesting thing, when I started this research, when I would tell people in the US what I was going to study, they were like, what? It was, you didn't know about it unless you were like really sort of in a community where it was a thing, or you read Love and Rockets comics, right? But by the time the book was published, it was a cliche, and it's become more and more of a cliche. So there's like this restaurant in Philadelphia called Distrito, which is owned by this restaurateur who's from Peru, but he's got like a whole bunch of different sort of slightly overpriced restaurants in Philly, and he's got like a wall of masks. There's another restaurant in Philly called Lucha Cartel, which is just all Lucha Libre themed. It's like I'm seeing Lucha Libre themed stuff everywhere. I've seen it in advertisements in the US. And I think that what's happened is that, my grim prediction that I made in 2006 has come to fruition, that it's become this kind of icon of Mexicanness and therefore Latin identity through this kind of kitsch lens. So, what can you say? That's the way things are. I mean, but at the same time, I kind of say that and I laugh at myself, because if anything really kind of set me up to do the historical studies in the ways that I did them, it was the way Jaramillo, the first time I met him, sat me down and said to me, look, I'll teach you Lucha Libre, but I'm not going to teach you the clown show that they show on TV. I'm going to show you the real, authentic Lucha Libre. I was like, he's going to show me the real, authentic, fake wrestling. And he and a lot of people were really concerned and complaining that it was becoming inauthentic, that it was becoming vulgarized. And when you step back, when you're in it, it makes perfect sense. And I feel like my job as an anthropologist is to understand why it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, that's the business. But when you then step back from it, it's like vulgarized as compared to what? And so I sometimes feel like Lucha Libre has become like the sombrero and serape of the 21st century. And that makes me kind of sad. But I don't know that it makes luchadores sad, I don't know that it makes, you know, people in Mexico or from Mexico particularly sad. So maybe that's my kind of anthropologist nostalgia for, you know, for invented tradition of the authentic past that never was, you know. Yeah.
How difficult is it to take off someone's mask during a match? It seems like,
It's difficult.
is it?
Well, is it? Okay, so there are a few ways that you can take off somebody's mask. Now remember, the masks are, this is closer to an authentic mask than the other ones. And you can see it's a pretty thin fabric, right? So there are two ways to do it. One is to untie the back just like a shoelace and take it off from there. The other, and this is, when they do this, they are really messing with each other. One of the things about the matches is that there's...
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not gonna put you in half Nelson, but what I would do is if you would just.
I'll be.
Okay, so I would have you in something like that. Oh. Maybe. The other thing that I could do is, because it's a very lightweight fabric, I might just grab at the eye hole and pull it. And rip it. When they do that, they really are pissed off at each other. Then you have to buy a new mask. But also, I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but they actually arrange some of the moves in advance. So if you have arranged that you're going to have your mask taken off, it's not very good. You just have to make it look credible. But if the mask is taken off during the match, that doesn't count as an unmasking. If the mask is, that's a disqualification for the person who removes the mask. But if you're a masked wrestler, you still have to make sure nobody sees your face, so you just sort of go like that. And wait, you know, have to like slip out of the ring, put your hands over your face like that, and wait for somebody to either lead you to the dressing room or bring you a new mask, and then you just sort of duck in. And I've seen also, I don't remember when or where this was, but like, you know, it was the technico, well, it's always the technicos who are unmasked in the ring because that's a cheating move, right? And there's always this like row of middle-aged and older women who are like serious wrestling fans and seriously supporting the technicos, and they would sometimes do things like hold up their sweaters, you know, like over the wrestler until he can get a new mask. So it's just, if it's during the course of a mask, though, that doesn't count as an unmasking. And unmasking is what happens after lucha de fuerza, after a betting match. And that's something that's been agreed to in advance. Yeah.
So, based on my reading of your book, I feel that you discuss a lot of the performative aspects of the sport. So, I'm curious that if people in Mexico who go to like see Lucha Libre in reality, do they really perceive that as a kind of sport, or is really just like go to a spectacular show?
I think that in any audience there will be three things. There will be people who are just going, I mean, you know, the cat's been out of the bag in the US since the 1930s, like officially out of the bag. Nobody goes to US wrestling anymore thinking that it's anything other than a sport. I think that you have people who are going, who you know, are perfectly aware that it's, you know, that it's rigged, but other people have asked people that, and what people say are things like, you know, well, I know sometimes it's rape, but I think also it's not. You know, it's like, they see it as both things. Yeah.
One more question, and then we'll.
Well, now we have this Cholita wrestling up on the screen.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. So we're watching Cholita wrestling right now on the screen, and there's like some interesting gender dynamics at play. So there's like it's kind of like hard to watch the scenes where the woman is getting beaten up by the man, but then there's also like scenes of like women beating each other down. So just could you just like talk more about what that's like and how the audience is reacting and like especially like the male on female violence?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, well, so I should talk a bit about the Chola as kind of an icon in Bolivia. And these women are essentially still in colonial times when indigenous women from rural areas started moving into La Paz, the capital city, and other urban areas. They sort of began to occupy this like middle ground of obviously not a Spanish colonialist, but not as indigenous as people in rural areas. And these women were really instrumental in sort of like the produce markets. Later were really important in labor unions and sort of political protest in general. And the Chola is in a lot of ways sort of a masculine character, definitely a woman, but sort of a did you say something?
No.
Okay. Sort of it falls on sort of the more masculine side of what a woman can be, and is in a lot of ways intimidating for many people, and very assertive and politically active. So in a lot of ways, it's not unexpected that a Chola would be displaying violence. And I've done a lot of sort of work about like what does it mean that this person who's sort of always already considered to be violent is now the character through which women are wrestling. But because of that, there's a very particular sort of dynamic, and I think a lot of people see the Chola as kind of, I think a lot of women and sort of working class, possibly indigenous women, see the Chola as a good representative to be kind of fighting against these men, and certainly capable of taking them on and can take care of herself and is a formidable force. So there are dynamics in which, you know, the Chola is also kind of sexualized. There's that element too. But I think no one is viewing it as sort of this helpless woman having violence enacted upon her by sort of more forceful men. That said, the Cholas are almost always the techniques. There's one who is Jennifer Dos Caras, Two-Faced Jennifer, who sometimes is rude, sometimes is Deca, and she does not wear the Chola outfit. She wears like a sort of like a cheerleader looking thing. So I think that's the specificity of the Chola as a character is really important to understand in thinking about their dynamics. And I also think that there are a lot of, actually seems to be more sort of visceral for the audience. So I just wrote this paper on kissing that happens in the matches as sort of a form of humiliation. And it's actually when one man kisses another man that it's sort of the most visceral and both exciting but also revolting for the audience. And not because of the homosexual aspect of it, but because of the humiliation of it, and the overt, I don't know, forcefulness of the person who's doing the kissing. So that's that.
But the cholitas never kiss each other.
No, actually, I've seen cholitas kiss men kiss them, men kiss other men, but I've never seen two women kiss. And I've asked. It's possible that happens occasionally, but and again, this kissing thing happens as, I've probably seen, I don't know, maybe 100 matches, and I would say I've seen kissing like 15 times. So it's not rare, but it's also not like it happens every time. But I've never heard a match in which two women kiss. And again, it's not like it's like you back somebody into the corner and, restrain their hands somehow and kiss them and then throw them on the ground. So there's obviously a sexual undertone, but it's not performed in a sexual way.
One last question, and then we will break. Any other last seconds?
Oh, sorry, I should.
I have one more about the cholitas. So I spent a little time in South America, and what struck me, the life is hard there. The labor, is very, very intense, and I saw a lot of women doing some real labor, so it's not surprising to see the physicality, What is surprising to me is it was also one of the more, from an outsider's perspective, someone that wasn't very deep in the codes of the culture. It was a more culturally conservative group than, especially in the Altiplano, as opposed to other parts of South America. So seeing this kind of wildness is surprising to me. I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, I think, again, this is happening in the cities, and my experience of La Paz is actually very kind of, carnivalesque. Every 2 months there's some sort of entrada parade where everyone's dancing and drinking in the streets. There's a huge, and again, this is sort of more of the young, youthful side of the city, but there's huge drug culture there, and it's not just tourists and not produced for tourists, but a lot of and even sort of 40, maybe even 50-year-olds are sort of really involved in this. I think it is a city of sort of a lot of excess and emotion and letting go. And so, to me, in a lot of ways, it makes sense that Lucha Libre has been really popular there. I do think in the Altiplano and in sort of smaller towns, villages, which I haven't spent much time in. But my sense is that life is much more sort of reserved there. But I think the cities, and again, there's definitely a difference between sort of the wealthy areas of La Paz and El Alto. But I think, again, part of the reason people migrate and often arrive in El Alto, which is kind of on the outskirts, is to kind of find a sense of modernity and urbanity and participate in, to get away from kind of like the campesino hard work lifestyle and enter more into a sort of, most of the sort of recent world or immigrants are involved in selling, vending things in some capacity. So it's a much less sort of manual labor kind of work. And I think that in a lot of ways, Lucha Libre is, it's appealing because it has all of this sort of spectacle about it, and represents something that in some ways is modern. It's a nice, particularly with the Cholitas Luchadoras, it's a nice melding of kind of this idea of being truly Bolivian from the Altiplano, but with this kind of modern twist that is much like migration of rural to urban.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson.